Our present world was not designed for humans. Man has become a slave to his self-destructive desires. And in this bizarre hyper-reality, or should I say hypo-reality, we call modern civilization, supernormal stimuli is next to impossible to avoid. But what is supernormal stimuli? A term coined by Nicholas Tinbergen after giving a bird two choices of which egg to sit on: a real bird egg versus a highly exaggerated artificial egg. And every time, the bird chose the artificial egg. The bird fell victim to supernormal stimuli by choosing the fake and artificial egg over the real egg. This stimuli is, well, super, and it affects humans just as much as it would a bird. Supernormal stimuli is an extreme stimuli that overwhelms your brain's control mechanisms. Therefore, your caveman brain does not know how to respond correctly, since it thinks it has won the jackpot in food or sex, which causes it to chronically overconsume. Since 10,000 years ago, this would have been a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is handed to modern man on a silver platter. Porn, junk food, internet, TV, social media, video games are available with a 10-minute trek to the grocery store, or it's in your pocket 24/7 in an infinite supply. Having infinite access to supernormal stimuli all day, every day, wreaks havoc on our physical, mental, and spiritual health. It stimulates us beyond anything that even a king 500 years ago could access. Even with his harems, feasts, and jesters, these can never match up with today's porn, junk food, and internet. Pretty much everyone knows the negative side effects of junk food, and yet everyone is still fat and gross. It is ruining our self-confidence, since we can't even look in the mirror without feeling disgusted with ourselves. Evolutionarily, it makes sense why man would get addicted to junk food. Something super high in sugar and fat and all the other weird shit in the food would be pretty much impossible for our mammoth hunting ancestors to find. But if they did find something like 100 Big Macs in the wild, they would eat as many as possible, since another opportunity like this would never happen again. But in 2022, stuff like Big Macs are everywhere, which is something our brain has not developed a control mechanism against, causing us to eat far more than we should, turning us into fat tubs of lard, making us mentally ill, and even weird stuff like making people more violent. Probably because of the vitamin deficiencies and low self-esteem that junk food causes, which inhibits clear thought. Many people just can't enjoy regular meals now. A plate of mashed potatoes with a chunk of roast beef with green beans is uninteresting to people. Their baseline for food has been so perverted, it's weird when food doesn't have 90% of the recommended amount of sugar for the day in one item. As a water enjoyer, it's weird seeing people exclusively drinking soda and not feeling sick. But their baseline for what's yummy is this hyper-stimulating, bubbly, sweet syrup, so anything less than that is considered disappointing. I'm sure us water enjoyers get just as much joy sucking down a cold cup of water as much as a soda drinker gets from their Mountain Dew. Too bad soda is pretty much poison. But it's hard to change your preference if your taste buds have been so ruined from the super stimulating soda that's drunken daily that now, when you drink something healthy like water, it's considered boring. When Nabisco introduced Oreos to China, Chinese people thought they were disgusting since they had so much sugar in them. Oreos had enough sugar for your average American to enjoy, but this much sugar was foreign to the Chinese. So Nabisco lowered how much sugar Oreos had, and the Chinese loved the stuff. I'm sure they liked them just as much as Americans loved their super sugary Oreos. Junk food is really bad for you. I know, hot take, but I don't think you need to entirely cut it out. But it wouldn't hurt if you did. Moderation is key, but if you have no agency and can't buy a bag of potato chips without eating the whole thing in one sitting, you probably shouldn't buy the bag at all. I mean, Junk food is designed to take control of one of our most primal urges, which is finding calorically dense foods. So you need a lot of willpower and discipline to control yourself. That is why I almost never buy junk food anymore. Since when I start eating a Little Debbie cake, I'm not satisfied with just one, and I start to eat the whole box. So I just separate myself from the cakes by not buying them. Cause if I did, I would end up on my 600-pound life in a few years. Before you buy something, just look at the food labels. Make sure it doesn't have a ridiculous amount of sugar, and avoid stuff that has corn syrup and seed oils. There is nothing wrong with fats, by the way. The studies that say fat is the problem were paid for by the sugar industry in the 60s, and one of the scientists who was paid off, D. Mark Heiskad, became head of nutrition at the United States Department of Agriculture, and he helped draft the forerunner to the federal government's dietary guidelines. And the guidelines are shit. Carbs should not be your biggest macro. Whether or not it's intentional, this pyramid is designed to make you fat. Also, when I buy stuff at the store, I make sure the ingredients are less than 2 paragraphs. Just eat food that's real. I find it funny, Homer Simpson, weighing 257 pounds in the 80s, was considered comically obese. Now, he's just the 9th fattest person in Walmart. For the internet, I'll include social media, video games, and TV. You all know the person I'm talking about. Can't eat a meal without also scrolling through TikTok. Can't take a shit without a couple of games of Clash Royale. Can't sleep without a mediocre YouTube video playing in the background. And the second this person isn't doing anything, they have to whip out their phone. You probably do at least one of these. I do too. If I can't sleep, I'll sometimes put a Vanoss gaming video on in the background to simulate having friends. On the surface, this may not seem like it's necessarily a bad thing. So what if someone wants to be on their phone while they're eating a bowl of Cocoa Puffs? They just want to de-stress. No. I hate this excuse. People will do regressive activities all day long and just say they are de-stressing. Bro, you are addicted. You're not de-stressing when you're browsing TikTok for 4 hours a day. You're stressing yourself out more by getting mad about stuff you have zero control over, and becoming insecure about your looks by looking at hot people all day. Being constantly stimulated by your phone destroys your attention span, ability to think critically, worsening of memory, and makes us depressed. People's baseline for entertainment is so high now, due to an endless stream of highly edited and curated content that is meant to stimulate us as much as possible to keep our attention. Think of Subway Surfers gameplay while someone commentates about something unrelated on top of it. I bet most Zoomers can't read more than a couple of pages from a book, since it's not stimulating enough, which is the main reason why the average American adult's reading level is that of a 7th or 8th grader, and the average high schooler's reading level is at a 5th grade level. Many Zoomers think you need to be stimulated all of the time to have fun, but the opposite is the case. You can't enjoy real life nearly as much if you constantly see fake life through this highly curated algorithm that shows how fun other people's lives are, which by comparison makes your life seem really boring. A walk through the woods isn't going to be enjoyable when you see crazy action scenes in movies, or you're screaming at League of Legends all day, or seeing hot bitches you wish were real on your For You page. Learn to be bored. Your baseline for entertainment has been completely perverted. You may think you know what boredom is, but real boredom hasn't really existed since... When was TV invented? 1927? So true boredom hasn't existed since 1927. Okay, no, that's too early. Probably more like the 60s, when TV channels became more developed and stimulating. A 1973 study in the last area in North America to not have TV, making it the last place where a control group could be found, showed that TV weakened kids' reading skills, made them more aggressive, had lower IQs, and were less creative. And for older people, they participated in social events far less often. I can only imagine this is much, much worse with the invention of the internet, since it is essentially a roided up version of television. One of the worst things to come out of smartphones is that people just don't talk anymore. I'm no social butterfly, but when I talk to someone, I make sure I'm not on my phone. I find it so rude when I try to talk to someone, but they only half listen to you since they want to be on their phone. And the second you guys are done conversing, they go back on their phone, showing they don't care to talk to you since they would rather be on their phone browsing YouTube shorts than look at your face and have an actual conversation. Zoomers are the loneliest generation, but funnily enough, when someone tries to be social with them, they go out of their way to ignore you, just because they want to browse on their phone more than they want to socialize. I can't imagine how bad it will be for the iPad kids. They're going to be so out of touch with reality, constantly stimulated by colorful Cocomelon videos, and not going outside to play with other kids during their formative years is going to do a lot of damage. If you are spending more than 2 hours a day consuming vapid content, like mindlessly watching YouTube, or if it's getting in the way of talking to people or actually doing something productive, you're probably using the internet too much. When you don't use social media, you realize how much time you have. Social media is meant to burn as much time as possible. Its algorithms are designed for that. Don't pee your life away for something as trivial as TikTok. Try to do something more cognitively challenging, like reading a book or learning something. I understand if you're just so burnt out that you need to play Clash of Clans for an hour to blow off some steam. But know that you are wasting time and frying your brain. There seems to be a huge social media burnout across the board, and people are realizing that being stimulated every second of the day makes us hollow shells of people. What I do to make sure I'm not too overstimulated is, at work, I make sure I don't listen to music or podcasts every day. My job is super boring, so I could easily do that. But I make sure that every other day, I just sit there and be alone with my thoughts, which is much more beneficial than music or podcasts, since I am actually able to contemplate on things instead of being distracted all the time. Porn is like the junk food of the mind, but in my opinion, worse. There is nothing more ruinous to your sexual health than pornography. Porn is the perfect example of a supernormal stimuli. Something like sex is something most of your ancestors had very little access to, and the sex they had with these one or few sexual partners would be considered vanilla, i.e. plain, boring, regular sex. But now, with pornography, many people can't enjoy regular sex since their sexual desires have been so warped. Internet porn offers your brain what it thinks are infinite partners, which your brain is designed to seek out, which is called the Coolidge effect. And porn takes complete control of the Coolidge effect by offering you infinite sexual novelty. Being able to indulge in as many weird fetishes with as many people, or what your brain thinks are real people, as you want is ruinous in the ability to be intimate. Porn is cited in 56% of divorce cases, since how would you be loving to your partner if your brain thinks it's mating with anime girls every night? Your brain was not designed to handle this, just as it wasn't designed to handle an infinite amount of super sugary, salty, and processed foods. Porn causes so many issues. Many of them are not even related to sexual health. Porn lessens delayed gratification, development of weird fetishes making normal sex seem boring, finding your actual partner to be disappointing compared to pornography, trouble concentrating, and depression. We know how junk food is super stimulating. A piece of chocolate cake is super sugary, which is what your monkey brain craves, and causes us to overconsume. But what about pornography? How is this super stimulating? It's just pixels on a screen. Even though they're just pixels, the dopamine response is very real. Just as real as it is with a piece of chocolate cake. Dopamine is the pleasure-seeking chemical, and opioids are the pleasure chemical. The dopamine released from supernormal stimuli is frying your reward circuitry, making your brain need more and more to get the same amount of joy from anything. And since your dopamine receptors are more sensitive than your opioid receptors, you are always seeking more than you are satisfied. The same reason if you eat a triple chocolate cake, you will get bored after a few slices and want something else is the same reason why people get bored of vanilla porn and have to watch 3 anime girls getting r/aped by goblins that have cocks the size of baseball bats just to get the same amount of pleasure as a vanilla viewer would. But just by porn's nature, it being available 24/7, as long as you have an internet connection, it is just so much easier to watch and overconsume compared to junk food. With junk food, you have to actually go to the store to get more. But for porn, you just need to reach into your pocket and it will magically appear on this little piece of glass. The orgasm being the biggest natural release of opioids available to your reward circuitry, this reward that your ancestors got when they were able to achieve their top genetic priority, which is reproduction, and modern man's brain thinking he can get that reward every night, you can see how this would dull regular sex and just life in general, since you keep having to abuse your strongest natural reinforcer, the orgasm, just to feel anything. I recommend you cut out porn completely. With junk food, I think occasionally eating it is fine, and it's easier to avoid it. Just don't buy it when you go to the store, and you won't have to worry about it. But with porn, you have an infinite amount of it in your pocket. Imagine if junk food had the same nature as porn, and you could just reach into your pocket and grab as many nerd gummy ropes as you wanted. Imagine how much more of a fat ass everyone would be. If it were like the 80s, where you had to go to those weird adult stores and buy magazines or VHS tapes, which would only be like one video, and you couldn't just skip around to the best parts, porn wouldn't be nearly as problematic. Reading those magazines a couple of times would not seriously alter your sexual health, since it gets boring pretty quickly. But with internet porn, there is no limit of what you can watch. Your most perverted desires can be fulfilled within a couple of seconds. The more you watch porn, the more you crave it. And since you have access to an infinite amount of it, you really shouldn't tempt yourself at all by occasionally indulging. At least with junk food, once you eat it, it's gone, and you have to go back to the store for more. But with porn, its supply never ends, and it's free, at least monetarily. It just costs you your mind and your soul. Your top genetic priorities as a human are food and sex, with love and friendship being a close second. Junk food hijacks your drive for food, porn hijacks your drive for reproduction, and the internet hijacks your drive for friendship. I'm just scratching the surface for each of these supernormal stimuli, and I could easily do a 25-minute video on each of them, which I'll probably do in the future. But man was not designed to live in this amount of abundance. I find it funny that all of our needs can be met with just a couple bucks, and we are one of the most miserable generations, probably ever, since life is just too easy. Even though man is very much still an animal, we are the only creatures who can rise above it. Unlike the birds in Tinbergen's experiments, we can understand that the egg is fake and act accordingly. We can discipline ourselves and cut out what we know is ruining us and become the masters of ourselves.